Welcome to Awesome Movie Year, the podcast where we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year. My name is Josh Bell, film critic and writer, and I am joined by my co-host.
I'm Jason Harris, filmmaker, comedian, and together, you and I are Jay Sosh.
Sure, why not? I had to think about that for a second, but I'll take it. So in this season of Awesome Movie Year, we've been talking about the films of 2003, and we are talking about relationship portmanteaus because this is our flop episode, and it features one of the great mashup names in celebrity relationships, Ben Affleck, and that is the film Gigli. So, Gigli.
His name rhymes with really. He says it a lot.
He does. A lot of name things happening here between Ben Affleck and Gigli.
Can we just say off the bat, even the title's bad of this movie.
The title is bad. And I read somewhere, I know, Jason, you're always looking up alternate titles and castings and whatnot. And I saw somewhere that supposedly they went through a number of different titles before deciding on this one, but I didn't see what any of the other options were, if that was ever reported on. So, but you have to wonder what was a worse option that they decided to go with Gigli as the title.
Yeah, Tijuana Donkey Show.
There you go. That's a good title. I would have been more eager to see that as a movie. So, we've done a lot of. We always do an episode on a big flop in our seasons, and I feel like this is the most notorious failure that we've yet covered. Although maybe North from our first season would rival it, but this is not just a flop. This is like one of the all-time most infamous failures in cinema history.
Well, North was a flop, but this one has actual hatred of, like people have their fangs out at this one, right? And a lot of that was Ben Affleck backlash, and deservedly so. I mean, one of the main criticisms is their lack of on-screen chemistry, and I was shocked at how little chemistry they had. Considering that they're both talented actors and they were romantically linked at this point in time. It was very strange, but what I appreciate about them is that they were like, "Hey, you know what? We're going to prove to you that this isn't a fluke. We'll make another movie together, and we'll show that we don't have any chemistry in that one either."
They really doubled down. And that's Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, for those of you who missed the Ben Affleck phenomenon. Not to be confused with the other famous Jennifer that Ben Affleck eventually married, Jennifer Garner, for Ben Affleck Part 2, I guess.
Or no, weren't they Jen Ben?
I don't know. There's too many of these little... I feel like the Ben Affleck thing started this trend, and the gossip writers decided that every celebrity couple needed to have some sort of combo name, which is really unnecessary. Yeah. And now I feel like any two celebrities who date end up with this name, and it doesn't work.
And to be clear, audience, while Josh and I might be hetero life mates, we are not dating. However, if you want some J Sosh merch, just write in and we'll get that going for you.
Yeah, I'm sure there's going to be a huge demand for that.
I kind of want one.
There you go. We could get Dave a t-shirt that he could wear while we record. So Gigli was a massive box office failure. It grossed $7.3 million on its budget of $75.6 million. And I just also want to say, having watched this movie, where did that money go? I would like to know. And for a movie that is like 75% three people in an apartment.
Yes, half of the movie does take place in his apartment. So that's one thing. There are two other things that I can answer for that. Jen and Ben, Jennifer Lopez got 12 million. Ben Affleck got 12.5. So that's a third of your budget right there, pretty much. And they did reshoot the ending because that was really the only problem with the film, the ending. But yeah, I mean, dude, it was just, it's a mess, Josh. It's a mess.
It is. I'm just saying that this movie even had it worked, is just not the kind of movie that should cost that much money. And I guess part of it is what you're saying, is that these actors were such huge stars at the time that they had to be paid this massive amount of money in order to just get them in a movie. But this isn't the kind of movie, even if it was well made, this isn't the kind of movie that becomes a massive blockbuster hit, I don't think.
Well, that was a miscalculation. And one of the most interesting things about us covering it was reading about all the ways that this went wrong, and I think we do have to talk about that as we go on. It's not just the final product, but the process to get to the final product.
Yeah, we definitely, I'm sure you have some tidbits to talk about there. Award-wise, this was nominated for 9 Razzies. And we've been, or at least I have been, kind of critical of the Razzies in many past instances. But I feel like this is one movie that probably deserved that kind of attention. It did win 6 Razzie Awards, including Worst Picture, Worst Actor for Ben Affleck, Worst Actress for Jennifer Lopez, Worst Screen Couple for both of them, and Worst Director and Worst Screenplay for Martin Brest, the writer and director. And to be fair, Ben Affleck's Worst Actor Award also encompassed Paycheck and Daredevil. So not only Gigli giving him that award, and they later gave it the award for Worst Comedy of Our First 25 Years in 2005, and nominated it for Worst Picture of the Decade in 2010. So the Razzies getting a lot of mileage out of Gigli.
Yeah, let's dissect that. Let's start with the end. It lost the Worst Picture of the Decade to Battlefield Earth. And in a way, I feel that's more insulting, because if you don't want to be the second worst picture of the decade, right? You want to be the worst if you're going to be the worst.
Yeah, have you seen Battlefield Earth? I haven't.
No, I never saw it. I bet Dave has, though.
I think I saw it, maybe.
Thanks,
probably.
Dave. Thanks for that. Really.
I feel like that's the kind of movie that would be memorable. Like, if you saw it, you would know that you saw it.
I don't know if I saw
Thanks,
it.
Dave.
All right.
Josh, 2 other points about the Razzies. One that I do agree with and one that I don't agree with. It was the first movie to sweep the big 5: picture, director, actor, actress, and screenplay. So that's something to hang your hat on,
Sure.
And I do not think, though, that the other nominations, which it did lose, supporting actor for Pacino and Walken and supporting actress for Lenny Kazan, I don't think they didn't win the awards, but I don't think they didn't deserve to be nominated. That's just overkill.
Right. Well, and really the 3 of them, who each of them basically just show up for a single scene, they are the best things in the movie. When they show up and kind of do their things, they're all over the top in their own ways, but in a more entertaining fashion. So
yes, and the most entertaining is Walken here, but
yes,
it's
sure.
really fun to see. I got to say, Pacino, who we know sometimes likes to eat space, he kind of held back a little on this one, and I was like, it was all right. You did all right there, Pacino.
Wow, your conception of Pacino holding back is, I wonder what your idea of him going over the top is, because I did not feel that way at all. I mean, I enjoyed the scene because it kind of broke things up and it was entertainingly ridiculous, but Pacino just starts at a 10 and then goes to like a 20 in that scene.
No. He didn't scream the whole time.
He didn't scream the whole time is your standard for Pacino at this point.
Well, look, he's made a good run for himself lately. He's coming back, right? Isn't he doing things?
Yeah, I don't know. We can talk about that in a little bit. So this movie not only was disliked by critics, but also disliked by audiences. It got a D- cinema score from the audience polling service. And again, the thing with CinemaScore is that they poll like the opening night movie. So they are polling the people who were most excited to see the movie, the people who went to see it at the first possible opportunity. And those people hated it that much.
And Josh, there's no better episode than to let our loyal listeners in on a little secret about CinemaScore. As you have mentioned, it is based out here in Las Vegas.
Yes.
And our dear associate, Harold Mintz, is one of the men who runs it. And he wears sweatpants to every movie I've ever seen him go to.
I'm sure Harold Mintz will really appreciate that little bit of trivia about him here. But yeah, we know Harold is great, and CinemaScore is based here in Vegas. The Mintz family owns and runs CinemaScore, and they're great people, and they provide a valuable service.
Yeah, we like it. We like them all.
Yes. Ebert and Roper gave this movie 2 thumbs down, of course. But surprisingly, Roger Ebert was one of the kinder critics to this movie, giving it 2 out of 4 stars. So not completely tearing it apart, and having some semi-kind things to say about it. He said, "So the movie doesn't work. The ending especially doesn't work. And what's worse, it doesn't work for a long time, because it fails to work for minute after minute and includes dialogue which is almost entirely unnecessary. But there is good stuff here. Affleck and Lopez create lovely characters, even if they're not the ones they're allegedly playing. And the supporting performances and a lot of the dialogue is wonderful. It's just that there's too much time between the good scenes, too much repetitive dialogue, too many soulful looks, behavior we can't believe. I wonder what would happen if you sweated 15 minutes out of this movie. Maybe it would work. The materials are there." And I don't agree, but I appreciated that he was trying to find the good in this movie.
I don't. I had this quote written down from him. They didn't quite get to where they wanted to be, but the film is worth seeing for some very good scenes. I'm going to disagree with you on that one, Ebert. So
I also disagree. And one of the scenes that he cites as good is the absolutely insane monologue that Jennifer Lopez delivers about the wonders of the vagina, which is just one of the most amazing. I mean, it's good in the sense that you're watching it and like every word she speaks is just sort of like astounding. And so I suppose in that way I kind of enjoyed watching it, but to cite that as like quality dialogue and fascinating, he's wrong about that, but I like that he offers that perspective.
It's that one didn't make it into Eve Ensler's The Vagina Monologues. It's bad, and it's yeah, man, it's bad. But and I want to say one thing up front, because we're gonna rip this movie. Clearly, we hated it. But we've seen, and the characters aren't good, Mr. Ebert, sir. But we've seen both Ben and Jen play good characters similar to this. I think of J-Lo in Out of Sight, and I think she's much better in that. And that's kind of another kind of tough, role where, she's on the opposite side of the law as on this one, but she's very good. And Ben Affleck in The Town is great. But, he's got to play that. He can't be like, I'm a New York gangster now. So it's just not, this is just a misguided effort all the way around.
Yeah, I agree with you generally on that point. And certainly those other movies are much better and are not only much better than Gigli, which is not hard to achieve, but are actually like good movies that people should see. But again, I appreciate that Ebert was trying to find something positive here. But other critics really enjoyed tearing this movie apart. Mick LaSalle in the San Francisco Chronicle said, "Gigli doesn't need a review. It needs an inquest. The movie is dead on arrival. Who or what killed it? There are multiple suspects. Was it the endless prattle, the ludicrously inappropriate soundtrack, the funereal pacing, the uneasy mix of vulgarity and cheap sentiment, the almost non-existent story, the resounding miscasting of Ben Affleck as a tough guy and Jennifer Lopez as a woman who'd actually speak to him, or the bad writing? The answer: this is one of those Murder on the Orient Express situations in which all the suspects are guilty. The result is the most thoroughly joyless and inept film of the year, and one of the worst of the decade." And spoilers for Murder on the Orient Express in there too, if you've never seen that.
I mean, the soundtrack wasn't horrible.
No, I mean, it wasn't necessarily
terrible.
horrible, but it's, as he points out, inappropriate. Like the music is always like trying to
Upbeat
sell
and,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
romantic and yeah.
Right. Or sappy and sentimental when they're talking to. We haven't even mentioned Justin Bartha, who, if you think Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez are bad in this movie, Justin Bartha is on a whole other level as this mentally challenged guy that they kidnap in order to put pressure on a federal prosecutor in New York City, because this is his brother. And I mean, honestly, I kind of felt like I felt that Affleck and Lopez were impressive in comparison to what he was doing, to what Justin Bartha was doing in this movie.
Look, unless you're Dustin Hoffman, don't take the role of someone who's mentally challenged. Okay. And now they wouldn't, I think we're past the point where you would cast Dustin Hoffman even. And I'm talking about Rain Man, but we know that there are very good actors with all types of physical and mental challenges, right? So you cast someone who fits that role now. This was, I mean, again, just a misguided casting all the way throughout.
Right. And I think even if you had cast someone more appropriate to the role, the dialogue and the actions that they give to that character are horrible. And in a way, I'm going to sort of excuse Justin Bartha, because I can't imagine how any actor could have played that and come off well.
Yeah, I mean, he keeps saying he wants to go to the Baywatch and this and that. And as much as I love impressions, Josh, I'm not going to do this one. So.
And I approve of that choice. Yeah. I feel like that's the right move.
But it did remind me of like just a cheap ripoff of Rain Man, Time for Judge Time for Wapner or whatever it was, right? And
exactly. Yeah. You got the impression that Martin Brest watched Rain Man and decided he wanted to have his own version of that.
And we've talked about Martin Brest here before with Beverly Hills Cop, and you watch this and you're just like, man, Beverly Hills Cop, you had that, Josh, I remember you especially talking about that opening chase in Beverly Hills Cop, and it just starts off with such energy and vim and vigor, and this does the opposite, I'd say. Like, it starts off with zero energy and somehow finds less throughout the process.
Yeah, that is an accurate assessment. So finally, Manohla Dargis in the Los Angeles Times said, nearly as unwatchable as it is unpronounceable, the gangster comedy Gigli arrives in theaters amid a public relations tempest. As anyone within reach of the worldwide flacknet knows, the film stars real-life paramours Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez, who, stung by bad publicity about the feature, have vowed never to work with each other again. First, though, the pair should reconsider working with anyone who thought well of a movie hinged on jokes about the disabled, switch-hitting lesbians, and the sight of a dead man's brain splattered across an aquarium. So forget the hype. This movie would stink even without its big-ticket stars, which isn't to say that either is entirely blameless. And we haven't even talked about the whole lesbian conversion angle of this movie yet.
And of course, Ben Affleck's second one, because Chasing Amy, we're now in double Kevin Smith territory between that and Jersey Girl and Ben Affleck, right? And and I remember loving Chasing Amy. I know you did too, but I wonder how that holds up now that we've kind of moved forward. But this is just, they should have shown the script to a lesbian and just had her cut all the dialogue that. To put it nicely, didn't ring true, shall we say?
Yeah. Right. I mean, you get the impression that Martin Brest has never met a lesbian or even really understands what a lesbian is.
But, I mean, it wasn't just him. Jennifer Lopez signed on to play the part. Halle Berry was going to play the part before her, right? Like, right. There were people who had read the script. I mean, Ben Affleck read the script, right? So
presumably he did.
There was something here that God, it was just such a miss, man. Just yikes
indeed. So I'm going to assume that I hope none of us had to sit through this a second time for this podcast. I assume you hadn't seen this before, Jason.
I had not.
Yeah. Nor had I, although I mean, I was reviewing movies at the time that this, I believe, at the time that this came out. So I guess I managed to avoid having to see it for those purposes. And so here I was to see it now. So yeah, this is definitely not a movie you'd want to watch more than once. Dave, did you see this at the time that it came out?
No, I almost rented it a couple times just because, to see how bad this thing really was. But no, never.
Well, let's say one thing, and we might, and we're definitely going to talk about it later in the season with another film. There are movies that are so bad that they're good, and there are movies that are so bad. Period.
Right.
This is the latter. There's nothing where you're like, oh, we could get a group together and eat popcorn and make fun of this together type thing. This is just bad.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's another thing is that in these flop episodes, we've had some movies that are giant failures and are terrible, but have kind of built this cult following in some way. I mean, I think about when we talked about I Know Who Killed Me, the Lindsay Lohan movie, but this doesn't seem like a movie that has had that happen.
Yeah, well, that movie's horrible, but let's go back to Streets of Fire.
Well, right, Streets of Fire is fun, but I picked that one because that movie is horrible, and yet it certainly has people who are fans of its horribleness. Yeah. And I don't think that that's the case with Gigli, although maybe it is. So Jason, you hinted you had some other background stuff you wanted to share about this one.
Josh, this dropped 81% from week 1 to week 2, which at the time I think was the largest drop ever in the box office as far as, money made, and dropped 97% by week 3. But my favorite is that in the United Kingdom, it was just savaged by critics so badly that every theater in the country pulled it after the first week. So.
I think even in the US, it was pulled after like 3 weeks.
Yeah,
that the studio just decided to cut their losses on it and give up. But that is impressive. I feel like that's something that doesn't usually happen for a movie at this level, that even if it's failing, it'll stay in theaters just to bring in whatever they possibly can bring in. And this it was like everyone immediately decided to disown it and pretend that it never existed.
Yeah, it didn't really work too well though. So, I mean, I think also that even the title is such a punching bag, that it's like you've kind of created this pop cultural reference point before it even came out, and that is one of the many problems of the film.
That it is. So we'll get into many more problems of this film when we come back and talk about our general thoughts on Gigli. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year. In this episode of our season on the films of 2003, we are talking about the biggest flop of the year, and really one of the biggest flops ever, Martin Brest's Gigli, and so many things to say about this movie and where it went wrong. Where should we even start?
I think we have to start with Martin Brest, and a lot of actors in this film have defended him. And I'm going to read a quote from Ben Affleck where he says, Martin Brest is one of the really great directors. Most of what I've learned that is good comes from Martin, but it just didn't work in its essence. And this is where I think it's important to this quote. Also, the studio wanted to change it into a love story because they thought that's what people want to see, because you guys, Ben and Jen, are together now, which is one of the great miscalculations in the history of miscalculations. So, this was originally, I guess, like a crime story and a caper type thing, and maybe that would have lent itself to something a little less horrible.
I guess, but all of the crime caper stuff, I mean, again, like I was saying before, a large portion of this movie is just 3 people hanging out in an apartment.
Right.
I was expecting far more of a crime caper kind of thing in this movie. Not really. I mean, I knew its reputation as terrible, but I don't think I really knew much about the plot or what it was really about. And so that's kind of what I was expecting, and maybe based on other Martin Brest movies that I've seen. And it's just not. It's so nothing happens in this movie.
Yeah.
And I mean, and I think that is almost as frustrating as anything else, is that at least if it was kind of in motion, if there was action, if there were developments, if the plot was moving somewhere, it could distract you a bit from the terrible acting and the terrible dialogue and the chemistry that the stars don't have. But that's all you have because they're just sitting around waiting for something.
But you're agreeing with me while you're saying you disagree with me, because basically what I'm saying is by moving it from crime caper or action movie to this, now you've put it all in this apartment and have relied solely on the dialogue and the chemistry between the two. So I think this change of concept, look, everyone's guilty, but this was dead before it arrived, I would say. DBA, dead before arrival. Boom, I just coined that term. That's why they pay me $12.5 million a podcast. But I mean, yeah, it's just, I mean, at some point someone should have just said, this is not the way to make this movie,
Right. Well, but I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not sure, like, at what stage of development Ben Affleck is referring to there, because I didn't see anything, the idea that maybe there was a script that was more of a crime caper that was changed. I saw a lot about, and you talked about the ending, how that was reshot, but the bulk of the movie, I think, was what it was already. And so what I'm saying is that whatever changes were made, it wouldn't have salvaged the movie to keep it in its sort of original form, because it still had all these problems.
Now, Josh, when you say the ending, which of the 8 consecutive endings are you referring to?
Well, I don't know. I read only one account, and this was on IMDb, that was quoting someone. And so you also have to wonder, like, how true is this? But I read only one account of how the ending might be different. And I mean, we don't have to do it point by point, but I think the main things that are important about how the ending would have changed is that, first of all, the two main characters, the Ben Affleck character and Jennifer Lopez character, Gigli and Ricky, would not have ended up together and kind of riding off into the sunset, which is what happens in the movie. And I think that's what you're alluding to, is the idea of the studio wanting it to be a love story. Instead, Ricky goes off, never to be seen again, and Gigli is killed. And so it's a much darker ending. He attempts to do the right thing and return Justin Bartha's character, turn him into the authorities, and ends up in a shootout with Christopher Walken, who plays a police officer, a corrupt cop, as we learn apparently in this ending. And Gigli is mortally wounded, and yet he still kind of redeems himself in a way by taking Brian to the Baywatch and letting him have his little moment, and then dies. So that all sounds terrible, but just in a different way.
Yeah, but I mean, in the actual movie that we watched, there's 8 endings in a row.
Right. Well, right. Yeah. Yes. I mean, and that's something that Roger Ebert alluded to in his review. And it does feel like and maybe that's part of a product of the reshoots, of them trying to sort of like move the story to a place that feels like a conclusion without having the conclusion that they initially intended to have. Yes, you are right. This movie, and it's like it has no conflict. We're spending half the movie with them just kind of holding on to this guy, waiting for orders from their bosses.
Yeah, nothing happens there. That's true.
And then they finally do. We get the big Pacino scene where he shows up as the big mob boss and yells at them and says, "I never asked you to kidnap this guy, and this is just creating more problems for me," and shoots Lenny Venito, their sort of mid-level boss. And then they just kind of leave and give Justin Bartha his freedom. And it's like, where's the tension? Where's the suspense? Where's the conflict here? There's nothing.
Well, Lenny Venito, he's one of the positive points of this movie. He did a fine job as that kind of mid-level mob character, I thought. So
yeah, I mean, that's the kind of character that he's like mid-level mob guy
in everything. Yeah. But Josh, that scene with Pacino, what's so infuriating about that scene is his dialogue references the plot hole, right? Because like the whole reason, so they say Lenny Venito's character says, "Cut off the kid's thumb and send it to his brother to let him know that we're serious," right? And then they go and they get into the morgue and they cut off a different thumb, right? And then Pacino's and he's like, if you're gonna cut off a thumb, you gotta have one with the right thumbprint, right? And it's like these are two people who are mob fixers, I would say, right? They know this already. They know that someone can check a thumbprint, especially if he's a federal prosecutor, right? So like, it's just so asinine that one, that they left that in the plot, and two, like they hang the lantern on it. It's like, look, we're so lazy and stupid that we're going to tell you how lazy and stupid we are.
Right, and that's why I feel like none of that stuff in that alternate ending would have made that any of that better. It just introduces more plot holes.
No, it's not that. The ending would have made it. The whole thing is, I think, tonally is misguided, and maybe the whole movie was never going to work. But the rom-com aspect, shackled this thing very, very much, I'd say.
Right, and I mean, as we've said, they don't have any chemistry between them. And there's no believability here, even as far as the characters go, that these people, even if Ricky, Jennifer Lopez's character, wasn't a lesbian, I would not buy at all that she is attracted to or romantically interested in Gigli, who is this absurd moron, essentially, this mook who doesn't, I mean, and Affleck plays him so cartoonishly that
it's not good.
I mean, you don't get the sense that this guy has two brain cells to rub together. And she at least comes across as someone who's a bit more thoughtful. And again, even the sexual orientation aside, I didn't believe for a second that these people would get together.
Right. She's a lesbian, but then, they're stuck in the apartment. He goes, for professional reasons, you share my bed with me, right? You get half of it. And he thinks just because she accepted that, like, oh, now I'm going to get the banger, right? And it's like, come on, man. Like, but yeah, it's really, if I was a lesbian, I'd be really offended by how they portrayed the lesbian character. And again, the mentally challenged character, Ben Affleck, tricks him by pretending to talk into a walkie-talkie, which is a flashlight, and tricks him because apparently a mentally challenged person doesn't know what a flashlight is. But
he can use a telephone to call Australia,
right? And it's not, in comedy there's a thing called punching down, right? And like, I don't even think this is punching down. It's just offensive, right? Like in a very misguided and unfunny way, right? Like that you could make jokes about anything that are funny, right? Like, or make something funny that most people wouldn't find funny, but I don't think this is funny at all. Like it's just lazy, really,
Yeah, it's definitely not funny, and every word out of Justin Bartha's mouth is just horribly offensive. And he's also, as you point out, he's not believable as a character. Just like Ricky isn't a believable lesbian, he's not a believable mentally challenged person because he doesn't know what a flashlight is, but then later he calls Australia, or he knows things or he doesn't know things. And I feel like, one thing they do is they never define what exactly is wrong with him so that they can just have anything be wrong with him at any moment that is convenient for the story. And
that's true, Josh. And I'm trying to give him a pass because there was no win. There's, like I said, Dustin Hoffman is the only guy who kind of has made that work. I mean, Billy Bob in Sling Blade, right? But just don't do it, man. Just don't take that role, move. We got to move past that. And I think we have. And I think that's a good thing, is like, if you somehow made this movie in 2020, you would find someone with whatever mental challenges that character has, and you would have that person play that in a more honest fashion.
Right. And
also it's 2021, so it shows what I know. So.
Right. But I think you would have done the same thing had you made this movie in 2020.
Yeah.
So your point still stands.
Yeah.
And this was Justin Bartha's first movie.
How did he survive?
That's what I'm amazed by. The guy still works. So but I agree with you that he only deserves some of the blame. That I'm sure he's doing just what he's been directed to do. And it's just, there's no way anyone could have effectively played this part.
And another side character, moving back to the lesbian thing, is that girlfriend character who's obsessed with J-Lo, who just comes in and assumes that she's sleeping with Gigli and is like, well, if that's what you want, then I'll just sleep with him too, and we'll all be one big threesome. And it's like, there's no, look, poly's a lifestyle for sure, but there's no reference point to this. It's just all the most basic, shallow version of sexuality that you would think about, I think.
Right. I mean, and I think that scene is another one that points to the idea that Martin Brest doesn't seem to have any idea what a lesbian is like or would do, because that reaction rings completely false. And as little chemistry as Jennifer Lopez and Ben Affleck have, it's also, there's no believability that Ricky and the blonde woman would have been in a relationship. They have even less chemistry.
Yeah.
None of it makes any sense whatsoever.
Yes, Josh. Yes. Just bad.
I think if we can maybe talk about some slightly positive aspects.
I tried.
Well, I think we mentioned Pacino, and Pacino, as I thought you put it very well when you said Pacinos. And that is what happens in this movie. And it's fun. He has a little ponytail for some reason. I like that. And he just kind of comes.
He's like a little flamboyant, this Pacino too, which I kind of liked. Is there was no reason to play it that way, but he just decided to do that. So.
Yeah. Another one scene wonder here. Christopher Walken, who apparently, again, was cut out of the original ending. So he only shows up early in the movie as this cop who's trying to shake Gigli down for some information. And he just comes in and he just does his Christopher Walken thing. And what I love about that scene especially is that Christopher Walken already has a very distinctive sounding voice, as we know. And yet at some point in the movie, he starts doing another voice on top of his normal voice as he's talking about the wonders of Marie Callender's pie.
I thought that scene, I mean, I'm not saying it's the watch monologue in Pulp Fiction, right? But that's the best scene in the movie because Walken is in it and he's really on his Walken game, right?
Right, exactly. And what he's saying is absurd. He's talking something about, he loves the pie so much. It's like, put it on your head and your tongue would slap you in the face. And I mean, I assume that wasn't improvised, but I would believe it if it was because it's just so random. But yeah, that comes, it definitely gives you a bit of a jolt there early in the movie.
Right. And
fun.
And I think Pulp Fiction is almost a fair reference point of like these kind of ins and outs and like just people coming in and, you're trying to have memorable, just rocket booster characters. And Walken is memorable, Pacino's memorable, but the whole movie is not memorable. So that's the big difference. There was a good Walken quote because I'm trying to find things where people are like, what can you take away that's positive? And Walken had this to say about Martin Brest. Marty gives you plenty of chances to do your best. It's hard when you go home at night and think, I wish I had that extra take because I could have done it differently or better or whatever. With Marty, every night I went home thinking, I don't know whether it was good, but I certainly did get a chance to do my best. And Jennifer Lopez said the same thing. He's only interested in what was going to make the best movie and bring out the best performances. Although it didn't really affect her performance, apparently, or Affleck's. So,
I mean, whatever he's doing, I'm sure he's a good guy and has made good movies. We did a whole Beverly Hills Cop episode, and we all love that movie. And he gets a lot of credit for doing what he did there. And I think that between that and also Going in Style, his movie about the kind of senior citizens who plan a heist. Between those two, which are, I believe, the only other Martin Brest movies I've seen, I was sort of anticipating some kind of fast-paced capery thing out of this movie. And it's nice that they all enjoyed working with him, but the result is still terrible.
It's very bad. The other movie you got to mention with Martin Brest is Scent of a Woman, where Pacino wins the Oscar. And there's a real energy there. This one, like we said, has zero energy, But yeah, and I mean, and this leads into our legacy segment, but sadly this is the last movie that he made. It was did he retire? Was he forced out of the business? Dave was supposed to get us an interview with him since the beginning of the last season, but I don't know, Josh.
We're still working on it. Yeah. One other sort of bright spot I wanted to mention was Lenny Kazan, who, much like Walken, and Pacino, kind of comes in for one little scene. She plays Gigli's mom, and she's just cranked up to 11, but she's having fun with it. And there's a bit between her and Jennifer Lopez where they talk about sexual exploration, and they have far more chemistry than Ben Affleck and Jennifer Lopez have. And for a second, I was like, maybe Gigli's mom is going to hook up with Ricky, and that would be something I would be interested in.
It's a very unbelievable scene, though. Like, hey, lady, I've never met before. Let me tell you about how I used to have sex with women in front of my son, who maybe I've never said this to, so.
Well, yes, obviously it's absurd and it doesn't really make sense, but at least it was amusing.
Yeah, no, we agree. Those look, if you want to watch Gigli but don't want to watch Gigli, just watch the Pacino scene, the Lenny Kazan scene, and the Walken scene. And you're good to go. Yeah. That's all you need. And you would also, I think another advantage is that you would have almost no Justin Bartha at all in any of those scenes, I think. Hey, Josh, you got to admit, Justin Bartha, his hair and Dave's hair, come on now.
He did have a bit of a Dave hair thing going on. I thought he looked like Screech a lot of the time, really, especially along with the way he dressed.
Rest in peace, Dustin Diamond.
Indeed. Oh, yeah. If only they had cast Dustin Diamond in that role.
Yes, I agree. That would have been a good move there. Yeah, I mean, I guess we should rate this, but one other thing I want to say is like, I think this was around the time like TRL was still on MTV, and they just stuffed this couple down our throat, like Bennifer. Like, I don't blame anybody for going in, just being sick of them already, because I was sick of them, and I think we were all sick of them, and just like, we got sick of other couples and other teeny bopper stars, to use a term from the 80s/70s, 60s, right? Like, they just got forced down our throats so much that it was just like, what are you going to do? What can you do? Let's see what you can do,
Right. And I think it didn't help that people going in with that attitude were then treated to Gigli.
Yes,
because,
I agree.
I mean, it's possible that you could have gone in with that and then seen a good movie and thought, hey, despite my annoyance with these people in their celebrity personas, they did a good job and I enjoyed that movie. Or maybe even a movie that failed at the time because of that whole celebrity thing that we could look back on and say, was not given its fair chance. But this is the absolute wrong movie to try to do that with. And but you're right. I think that happens. I think of like By the Sea, the Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie movie that people thought of as this big vanity project for them, which is not a good movie, but is not nearly as bad as Gigli.
Yeah, and this was a definite low point in the acting careers of both the stars.
That it was. So we'll talk about that legacy, but do you want to give this a rating out of pieces of Marie Callender's pie?
Sure. Or I was going to say difficult to pronounce last names. So.
There you go. Either way, we can go with
it. Gets one. It's a 1. I mean, and I thought and it's anywhere between 0.5 and 1.5. So I went right in the middle with 1. 1 difficult to pronounce last name.
I'm going to give it 1.5 pieces of pie because I was kind of entertained by those little one scene bits. And I've seen so many bad movies, like, and furthermore, bad movies that are not only misguided, but are like technically inept, where people can't even use a camera. That this movie is not even in the bottom most tier of all the movies I've seen.
Right. So it is professionally directed. But but for a professional director who's a professional filmmaker to put out this script is pretty bad.
Right. And I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying I found a couple moments of entertainment in it. So 1.5 from me. Dave, what do you want to rate it?
I'm going with 1, and I will say I would be shocked if we ever cover something worse than this.
Yeah, I think this is the lowest rating I've ever given anything on the show.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, I might agree that it's probably the worst movie that we've covered. Although I would say that, again, going back to like I Know Who Killed Me, I found more bits of entertainment in this movie than that, which is just straight up garbage from beginning to end.
Yeah. God, if I had to choose between watching those two, like if you're like, you have to watch one of them again, I'd just be like, just put on whichever one's shorter. Leave me alone.
Right. Yeah. I think that one was, I think I Know Who Killed Me is only like 90 minutes, but We'll come back in a moment and talk about the legacy of Gigli. Welcome back to Awesome Movie Year in this episode of our season on the films of 2003. We've been talking about the year's biggest flop, Gigli. And as far as the legacy of Gigli goes, really, as much as it was sort of a product of the time and of this tabloid fascination with Bennifer, as we've talked about, it has endured as one of the worst movies of all time. Like even now, all these years later, if you see a list of the worst movies ever made, there's pretty much a guarantee that Gigli will be on there.
Yeah, and that's fair. I do think we're all happy, especially the last 2 years, that Affleck and J-Lo have really come back as actors. But it's kind of a bummer that Martin Brest never got another chance after this one.
Yeah, it's crazy, as you noted, and as we talked about in our Beverly Hills Cop episode, that this guy just disappeared. Not only did he maybe have trouble getting another gig or have to work with a smaller budget or take some time off, he disappeared. He never made another movie. He didn't direct a TV episode. He's never given another interview. It's like he doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah, and he could have directed crime shows or something like that, or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and worked his way back to getting maybe a lower budget film made again, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So, I mean, that's what makes me feel like it must be deliberate. And especially because also no one else involved in this movie. I mean, maybe Affleck and Lopez had kind of a bit of a rough patch around this, but they were able to keep working and eventually, as you say, kind of come back and get back in the good graces of audiences and critics. Any of the other actors, even Justin Bartha,
yeah,
as we say, is his debut film. And he's not a big movie star or anything, but he's a regularly working actor. He's been a regular on a bunch of TV shows. He's in all the Hangover movies. Like, he's a perfectly successful guy. So there's no reason to think that Martin Brest couldn't have done, as you say, gotten a gig directing an episode of an HBO show or something. And obviously the guy is professional, as all those quotes that you read out attested to. The actors enjoyed working with him. So I feel like he must have been so traumatized by this that he decided, I can't do anything else anymore.
And I think it goes beyond just professional. Like we loved Beverly Hills Cop. We know Scent of the Woman is a great movie, I think. And you talked about how you like Going in Style, right? So that's 3 great movies he's made right there, right? That goes a little beyond just like a journeyman professional, I'd say.
Right. I think so. And I mean, I haven't seen Scent of a Woman, and I feel like that's a movie that was highly acclaimed at the time and is now maybe known more as a punchline for all the ridiculous Al Pacino-isms in it.
Doesn't make it not a good movie though.
Right. And I haven't seen it, so I can't really say, but I did really enjoy Beverly Hills Cop. I like Going in Style. Midnight Run is another movie that he made that was a big hit that I haven't seen, but certainly a lot of people enjoy. So yeah, that to me points to the idea that he must have made this decision. And I was trying to find something about this because, again, he's never done an interview or anything like that. And the only thing I found somewhere was a post on a Reddit message board talking about a podcast that I hadn't listened to, but apparently Amy Heckerling is a friend of Martin Brest's, and she was on a podcast and asked what happened. And she claimed that he's been writing and working and is sort of planning to have some sort of new project. But I mean, after 18 years, like, what could he have been?
Yeah, let's do it. So.
Right.
J-Lo, I feel like her cultivated image has always just been annoying and fake and the opposite of Jenny from the Block. But man, is she awesome in Hustlers. Like when you give her a role that she can really sink into, like I said, Out of Sight and Hustlers, like, dude, oh my God, she's great. Like when she wants to be great. So it'll be interesting to see what she does coming up. But then you look at the projects she has coming up and you're like, oh God.
Yeah, I think she got into a lot of these really dumb, cheesy, mainstream romantic comedies and a lot that were successful. So obviously it worked out for her, but she didn't seem like she was interested in challenging herself that much or taking on these dramatic roles. But you're right, she's great in Hustlers, and she got a lot of deserved acclaim for that movie. And that was a movie that not only is she really good in it, but she was like a driving force behind getting that project going. So, she had good taste and good instincts in terms of what would make for a worthwhile film. And hopefully she'll return to that. But as you say, she's got, I think, some like action rom-com coming up with Josh Duhamel as her next project.
Well, and we know why that's been in the news because of Armie Hammer dropped out. And then I think she's doing The Mother. Do you know anything about that? Is that a horror?
I don't know, but I'd be curious to see her in a horror movie. I don't think that's something she's ever done before. She did do some.
The Cell. The Cell was.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
The Cell is good. The Cell is good, and that's a very weird movie that involves her kind of stretching a bit. So she can certainly.
I mean,
but
wasn't she in Monster-in-Law? That was one of her.
That is. You know what? Monster-in-Law is worse than Gigli.
I was gonna say I wasn't gonna go that far, but that's another one of the worst movies I've ever seen. And I appreciate that you've taken that hard stance on it. And I never saw Made in Manhattan, but it just infuriated me that the premise was this beautiful woman is a maid, so no one will ask her out. Or The Wedding Planner, right? This beautiful woman is a wedding planner, but she can't keep a man. And I was just like, I hate everything you're doing for 10 years, Jennifer Lopez.
Right. But those movies were all successful. I think even Monster-in-Law, sadly, was a successful movie. So, she kept doing what was working. And of course, she has a whole music career as well. So, but whether you like it or not, also was working out for her.
Yeah, I know. She just did the Super Bowl like a year or two ago. And I'm like, why is this still happening? No, but like I said, Hustlers, amazing. She's great in it. Affleck came back hard. Obviously, Argo as a director and producer and writer, he's proven to just be fantastic. Dave, what do you think? Because we know he's coming back as Batman in Justice League and The Flash.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, who's not excited for Batfleck?
Yeah. I mean, he was fine as Batman, but I mean, to me, that was a less interesting choice. When his comeback was so built on him as a director and as a writer and as a filmmaker that to then just take on this big franchise role where no matter how good you are as an actor, you're just going to be part of this giant machine. I was less enthused. And I was actually more enthused when he decided to quit because it made it seem like he could go off and do something more interesting. And I mean, we talked about that a lot. We did our episode on Gone Baby Gone, which is a great movie. Yeah. And it's been a little while since he directed it. He's had a lot of projects that he's been attached to that haven't gone forward. And so I hope that whatever it is, when one of these projects finally happens with him as a director, that it lives up to the previous thing.
Was he directed any? Oh yeah, he directed that one thing after Argo that you saw that nobody else saw, I think.
Yeah, Live by Night, which I feel like, again, I think is an underrated movie, but it was not particularly well regarded and was not successful. Is another crime movie based on a Dennis Lehane novel who wrote the source material for Gone Baby Gone. I enjoy, and I would recommend that movie. I feel like it's underrated.
He's good in Gone Girl. Right? And then
great, yeah.
And I think last year, maybe slipped under the radar. The Way Back is a good movie, and he's good in that movie. So I think they both have shown that they can bring it, just not together.
Right, and I mean, we briefly mentioned Jersey Girl, where they did appear together. Although Jennifer Lopez has a small part in that movie. And Jersey Girl, it's been a long time since I saw Jersey Girl, but I would almost go so far to say that Jersey Girl is also worse than Gigli.
I love that you say that.
Wow.
That's amazing.
I remember in my review saying that I could not have liked this movie less if Ben Affleck had stepped off the screen and punched me in the face. So
and that came after this. So they did that after this,
Right. I don't know when the time, like I feel like both of them were probably already shot
within
by
a
the
year.
time yeah. But I don't know the timeline of that. But that is also a very bad movie.
I agree. I agree. And we like Kevin Smith, and we know that he responds to people who tweet at him how bad his stuff is. So I'm going to put this in an audiogram, and Josh, he could yell at you.
I feel like so many people have told Kevin Smith that Jersey Girl is terrible that just one more from a random podcaster isn't going to mean a whole lot.
Well, not just Jersey Girl. He's made a lot of bad movies.
He has made a lot of bad movies. Yeah, you say we love Kevin Smith, but we love like 2 Kevin Smith movies, and the rest of them are not good. But Ben Affleck and Kevin Smith still tight. I think Ben Affleck was in the most recent Kevin Smith movie briefly, wasn't he? Jay and Silent Bob reboot.
Mm-hmm.
And that was infuriatingly bad.
I haven't seen that, in part for that reason.
It's so bad. I hate it so much, Josh.
Super. Well, that's a good, so many. I feel like in a lot of our episodes, we have, further recommendations of, this actor was in this other good movie.
Well, we did that.
Movie.
We said The Hustlers in the way back recently.
True. I'm just saying we have more recommendations for movies not to see in this episode than we usually do.
And somehow Kevin Smith got the brunt of it. So.
He did indeed. Anything else about the legacy of this movie that you want to mention?
How about this great Conan joke, Josh? The Mets are so bad that they will be renamed the New York Gigli. That's one that he said back when it happened, when Gigli was in the thing. I like it. It's a little weird, Josh.
Yeah.
I don't think I have anything else, Josh. I'm done with this.
Yeah, we don't need to pile on Gigli anymore.
Yeah.
So that is Gigli, and that is this episode of Awesome Movie Year. You can check us out on social media.
You can. We're at JSosh on all the socials.
We got a joint Facebook account like those married couples have.
Yeah, we're gonna post pictures of our newborn, like 400 in a row. Like they won't be doing anything different. It didn't learn anything from picture 1 to picture 400. But you got to post it. Okay, I'm at Jason Harris Comedy on Facebook and Instagram, J Harris Comedy on Twitter, and go for jason.com, the Gigli of websites, everybody. AwesomeMovieYear.com, serviceable. Awesome Movie Year on Facebook and Instagram, Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter. Hey, really exciting, Dave. Before we go on to Josh's, I want to say we are nominated for a podcast award for the Steampod. How do you say it, Dave? You tell me.
The Self-Made Independent Podcast Awards. Yes.
Cool. So thank you for everybody who's been listening. And if you voted for us or want to vote for us, Dave can tell you.
Link in the show notes.
Yeah, there's a link in the show notes.
We've been posting. It might be over by the time this episode comes out. So
possibly.
Okay.
We'll see.
Well, if not, Josh, go ahead and take it. Either way, it's been nice to be nominated, Josh.
We appreciate it. It's always nice to be nominated.
Even for a Golden Razzie. So.
Yes, there you go. I'm sure it was lovely to be nominated for a Razzie. You can find me at joshbellhateseverything.com, at Josh Bell Hates Everything on Facebook, and at Signal Bleed on Twitter. And you can listen to our producer, David Rosen's awesome podcast, Piecing It Together.
Check out Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts, and you can follow us on social media at Piecing Pod. And don't forget to join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where I'm sure some of those people actually like this movie.
Chad, we're talking to you, Chad.
Maybe Chad was a big fan of I Know Who Killed Me, I think.
Yes, he was. Yeah,
he's a good sport.
Yeah, yes, we appreciate all the support in the Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces group.
How you want to bet me that Chad has at least 2 or 3 J-Lo albums?
that I would buy that more than that he likes Gigli, I would say.
True.
That seems more likely. All right. So what's in the next episode of the Chad podcast?
Awesome Chad year, Josh.
Yes.
Hashtag for Chad. Anyone who's in the group knows of that. Enough inside jokes, guys. Next, we are doing the Palme d'Or of 2003, Gus Van Sant's Elephant.
So tune in next time for Elephant, and thanks for listening to Awesome Movie Year.
Thank you for listening to Awesome Movie Year. Make sure to follow Awesome Movie Year on Facebook, at Awesome Movie Pod on Twitter, and at Awesome Movie Year on Instagram. And if you like the show, review us and rate us with 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
An All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.